Hey there, welcome to Conversations with Counselors, a podcast that is about just that, hearing what is on the hearts and minds of biblical counselors who are passionate and dedicated to bringing gospel truths to those who are seeking it. My name is Curtis Heaton, and I am the Executive Director of the Canadian Biblical Counseling Coalition, an organization whose vision is to see every person in Canada have access to local biblical care and counseling. We do that by encouraging and equipping the body of Christ for the work of biblical counseling. That's why this podcast exists, to encourage you and equip you. So let's dive in. In this episode of our podcast, I had the privilege of sitting down with Betty-Anne Van Rees. Betty-Anne is a longtime and founding board member of the CBCC. She has also served for many years on the council of the BCC and more recently on the board of directors. Betty-Anne loves to teach and disciple others in biblical counseling. She is an ABC training leader and a frequent conference speaker. Betty-Anne is deeply committed to the local church and has served faithfully for many years at Hespler Baptist Church in Cambridge, Ontario. Betty-Anne has 2 adult children, a daughter-in-law, and 2 grandkids whom she loves to spend time with. Now let's jump into my conversation with Betty-Anne. Welcome to our podcast, Betty-Anne. It's good to have you on. So I suspect many people probably already know you because you've been around for a while, but just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a little snapshot into your life, a little bit of your story, what you're doing these days.
Okay. So I feel like, I've been reflecting a lot sort of on big picture life stuff. So I think it's important to say I come from a family of 6. I was 5, like the 5th child of 6.
Okay, yeah.
So non-Christian family. Nominally church going in my early years and then not at all. And then I married and had 2 kids, and my husband died in 2000, and today my kids are 37 I think and 34.
Okay.
37, 35.
Okay.
And I have 2 grandkids. Yeah, so my son and his wife live in my neighborhood with the 2 grandkids, which is lovely.
Yeah.
And my daughter lives in Australia.
Okay.
Which is not as lovely.
Not as lovely, yeah. But yeah, it's sweet that you've got the grandkids nearby, and this morning you were just dropping them at school.
School drop off, yeah.
Yeah, those are precious times.
I love it, yeah.
How often do you do that?
2 mornings a week. Right now I'm doing school drop off. 2 days a week I do school pickup.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then you bring them back to your place, or?
On one day I take them to their place because there's dance lessons, and then the other day they come to my house and we hang out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so where did you grow up, and have you been always in kind of this Cambridge area?
Yeah, I grew up in Guelph.
Okay.
So I've lived like within 30 minutes of where I was born my whole life.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
Which is it's kind of an unusual thing today.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you've been, and what have you been involved in?
Really, like by and large, say like the last 15 years have been invested in the church, really, one way or another, teaching, speaking, working at advancing the ideas of the care of the soul within the church rather than sending people out, and then doing some training and doing some counseling, and
Okay. Yeah.
It really is my life focus that I help the church in whatever way God would have me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, including nursery on Sunday morning.
Okay, yeah, it's a bit of everything.
Yeah,
that's
so
great.
So parents can be in church and hearing the Word of God. I mean, that's a big deal. Yeah,
that is cool.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for the nursery ministry, having young kids. I know it was like a reprieve on Sunday mornings when you could drop your kids off and just sit there and nobody's screaming at you.
Yeah. My prayer on Sunday morning is that we're going to get through the morning without having to call parents in. Let them stay there the whole service.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about like your journey into biblical counseling. Like how did that start? And so I know you talked a little bit about losing your husband in 2000.
Yeah.
Was that kind of where the journey started into biblical counseling?
Yeah, absolutely. I had no thoughts of anything in this nature. It's interesting. I've thought about this recently too. Like I was pretty much 100% unfamiliar with the Psalms before my husband died.
Okay.
It just wasn't where I went. I was in the New Testament looking at how do I live the Christian life, basically. And so then when my husband died and I needed help, because I hadn't even been building a foundation of help by being in the places where people were lamenting and grieving and things. And I was in a church that had a written policy that the pastor was only allowed to counsel twice. And then he was to send us to professionals, and the professionals were going to be secular.
Yeah.
And I knew they're going to think I'm crazy because all my questions are about God. What is he doing? Does he see us? Does he care about us? Is he punishing us? Are we in trouble? And things like that. And when I realized the church wasn't doing it, I was like, I've read my Bible enough to know that we're supposed to have the answers for times like this. Why aren't we offering answers for times like this? So it took actually 2 years, but the Lord led me to Wendy Bowman, divinely, and I met with her. She met with me and the kids, actually. And she sort of helped us get along the road. Like it's not like we got to the end of anything, but we just got along the road. And particularly me, I felt particularly helped, I think. Okay. Yeah.
Wow. I love Wendy. She's She's been doing that for years.
When like 2000, and she'd already been at it a little while. And at that time, I found her name on the NANC website, which I would have never, which is ACBC now, I would have never, known where to look if I hadn't been guided there specifically. And there were only 4 names in the whole country on there.
Wow.
And besides that, I don't know what access there was in the country at the time. I do think Elisha House, which is now Insight Biblical Counseling Center, was in existence, but I would have never known how to find them.
Yeah, things were different back then, right? In terms of, we had the internet, but just in terms of trying to track things down, if it wasn't, if you didn't know how to, if you didn't know somebody.
And organizations wouldn't have been using it for marketing, as much back then, right? I think there might have been access through the internet to them, but I wouldn't have known how. I didn't understand before encountering Wendy that biblical counseling was a thing. I was looking for something. I knew I needed help. I think by this point, yes, I had already been thinking about going back to school. And so I was calling schools across the country, Christian schools, and however I was, whatever I was asking for, because I didn't know to use the term biblical counseling. I'm just I think I was saying I want to learn how to help people know God better in their suffering or something. And everybody I talked to said that's not what we offer. So I think they knew I was probably asking for biblical counseling, but that wasn't what they were going to be able to give me. And so, I was like, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Why are we not doing this right? I'm like, I gotta get this right. And so, that was sort of the beginning of, I got helped, and my eyes were opened up to new things. Wendy took me to a conference. And at the conference, I went to a lunch for a master's degree. And then I signed up, so I paid for that lunch. But I got a master's degree from the Master's University, and just hungry to. The thing was, because people were watching me navigate the loss of my husband and feeling like she didn't collapse, which I think was anticipated by everybody. It was overwhelming. People were asking me for help. And I was feeling like, well, if I'm going to offer help, I want to do it better than I can right now. So then I just sort of started figuring out, how do I learn how to do this better? Wow.
So you met Wendy, then quickly you were like, okay, I want to do some training. And then you went to the Masters. When was that? What year would that have been around?
So Masters, I think I started at the Masters in 2006. And at the time, I think they were the only ones who had a distance learning option, which was awesome. I was home, my daughter was homeschooling, and I was homeschooling. We homeschooled together.
That's cool.
It worked out really well, and Yeah, so 2006, I think it took me 5 years. I think it was 2011 before I was finished.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was so good. I remember I'd fly out there and have my lectures modularly every summer, and I think the third summer I'd been out there for 3 weeks, just because of how many courses I was taking, and on the plane home I cried almost the whole way home, and just feeling like, I can't believe, God, that you picked me for this privilege. I felt so privileged to be growing to know him in the way I was growing to know him, that hadn't been available to me before through the teaching I'd had. And
so cool.
I just thought, like, I know so many more people who would be more worthy of this and could use this, and you picked me to have this. And yeah, I feel like the intimacy that the Lord has grown for me in our relationship, because of this journey, and there was no other way to get it. Yeah, it's been good. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a sweet experience.
Yeah.
And then I just think, flying home, be a decently long flight, you'd have a lot of time to
to cry.
I was going to say to cry, but also to unpack and process all that stuff. Yeah. So who did you meet down there? Is that where you met Cam?
I did meet Cam there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if he was there every year when I was there. Just the way the courses lined up, you didn't necessarily see the same people every year, but definitely more than once. And one time I think he brought, definitely his wife, maybe a child or 2 or 3.
Yeah, because his kids would have been young at that point.
Yeah, they were young.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've met some of them for sure in person.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Yeah.
For our listeners, that's Cam Bernard, who's on our board.
And his wife's Kim. Yeah.
Kim. Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
So that's probably all the connections I have from there that are still in my life today.
Yeah. And who would have been some of the profs back then, at Masters?
Wayne Mack was my first one. He was 70 my first year.
Okay.
And he taught the first day of class. And the first day and a half, actually. So from 8 till 3:30, I think, and then from 8 till noon the next day, from Genesis 1 to the very beginning of 4.
Okay.
And I just thought, this book is never going to be the same to me again.
Yeah.
He talked about how God counseled before the fall.
Right.
How Satan counseled. How God counseled after the fall. How Adam and Eve counseled each other. And then Cain and Abel, got into Cain and Abel. Yeah. And I just thought, oh my word, he's just unlocked the whole book for me.
Yeah.
It's like,
in the first 4 chapters.
Yeah, so Wayne Mack was there, Ernie Baker, John Street, Robert Somerville. Actually, Robert we're still in correspondence, which I really love.
Oh, cool.
Really sweet guy. Yeah. He actually, he had an impact, he would have had one of the most significant impacts while I was there, actually. Besides Wayne Mack's Bible memorization, which I always just thought, I was in my 40s already, I thought when I grow up I want to be like Wayne Mack. I'm still not there, but Robert Somerville in the years while I was there had a back problem. I don't remember what the problem was, but causing him severe pain. And he had at least one surgery that failed. It might have actually been even 2 surgeries that failed. And so one of those summers he was unable to teach. But he did come on campus, and what had happened to him was visible. He had lost a lot of weight. While he was recovering from the failed surgery, he was on pain medication that he became addicted to and caused depression. And I was just I thought, what I learned from Bob the day he came to school and just said hi to us, it wasn't like he was telling us anything really, it shaped everything else I was learning, because there was a sense in which I felt like I'm learning how to fix people. I'm going to give them the Bible answer and they're going to be okay. and all of a sudden I'm looking at Bob and thinking, Bob has all the answers.
Right.
And he's not okay right now. And he's going to be okay because God is going to get him there. There wasn't a sense of hopelessness, but there was this sense of he's stuck in the mire. And, there's not just here's some verses and you're out of the mire. And I'm really grateful for that, actually, because I feel like it did profoundly affect the way I speak to people.
Yeah.
And it just leaves a lot more room for the Holy Spirit and grace.
Right.
And yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think about that, like I'm doing a lot of teaching at Heritage, with young students.
Yeah.
And I remember even my journey into biblical counseling, how, when you start to learn all this stuff, you get really excited and you're like, I've got all these things, I'm going to fix people. And then you realize, like, life is complicated. It's not, and it's not just about having the right answer all the time. And sometimes we need to just sit in the mess, in the muck, in the mire, as you say, with people, because that's, counseling is sort of that ministry of presence. I know we talk about that a lot. Like it's, sometimes just closing your mouth when...
He's written a book about his journey in depression, and they were really active in seeking to feed his soul with good things. It's just that the food doesn't always immediately nourish.
Right.
It's going in. You should keep doing those things.
Right.
But know it's okay that it hasn't solved the problem in a moment. Yeah. And the Lord lifted him in time, but it did take time. Yeah. So I have a special heart for Dr. Somerville.
Okay.
He's been a really good cheerleader for me too.
Oh, okay.
He encourages me really well. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's neat. You still have that connection after all these years.
Yeah. Because I finished 2011. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're going along the timeline. So, when did you get involved with the BCC, like the Biblical Counseling Coalition?
Yeah. I think maybe around 2013.
Okay.
I don't know for sure. I do know how it happened. I was at a conference again, and the BCC was brand new.
Right.
And Bob Kellerman was the executive director, and he had a table at the conference, and it was just really brand new. He had some photocopies of papers, like the confessional statement and stuff like that on the table, and I talked to him and said, you need a Canadian on that board because we need your help.
Yeah.
You've got to help us. Look at all you've got here. We need help.
Yeah. With his photocopies. Yeah.
I'm not sure how much impact that had on it, and I didn't say it meaning I should be on your board, but sometime after that, Bob reached out to me, and there had been discussions, and lots of my professors were on the BCC at the time, so they knew me personally and had input, and so I was invited. Wow. Yeah, sometime around 2013.
2013. Okay. Because it started in 2011, 2012 ish,
maybe I think I was maybe 2 years in, on the third year that they gathered, I was maybe with them. So somewhere back there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and what a privilege.
Oh.
Yeah, what a privilege
to be part of the kind of the early days
in that room and I think one of the things I've been thinking about this a lot. We're a culture that elevates people, and often we're elevating strangers that we don't know, and then those strangers disappoint us. And I feel like that's a hard thing, and I'm really wondering in my own heart and life, what do I do with that? And maybe really local church is where my heart should be, and I have men to elevate in other, in ways that are good by encouraging and things like that. But one of the privileges of being on the BCC is knowing the people who write the things that we read, and knowing them personally and seeing their character. It has been every year when we gather, it's been a highlight for me. I think beforehand, you really can't afford to do this anymore. And then I go and I think, you can't afford not to do this anymore, because it is such an encouragement to my soul to be with those people and just experience the sweet fellowship that we have together, and see the beauty of Jesus in real human beings and share that with them. Yeah,
that struck me because you're right, we do tend to sort of put people up on pedestals, and we read their books, or we listen to their sermons, or we consume content from a distance. But then you sit down and that's what struck me about meeting some of these people in the biblical counseling world.
Yeah.
Like sitting down, at the dinner table at the summit, and you're sitting beside Ed Welch or, or Mike Emlet.
And he's interested in you.
Yeah, and he
right?
asks you questions about things.
Yeah, like
or,
it's not like he's some... yeah, I know. It's,
and there's such a humility.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're a brilliant person, and I feel so honored to sit with you. But they're so down to earth, and it's refreshing.
When I listened to your interview with Mark Vroegop, and he said, I think I could practically almost quote him because it really meant a lot to me. Like I love biblical counselors. Biblical counselors smell like sheep. And that's what I feel like when I'm there. I'm like, right. These people are sheep who've really been in it. They have really been in the dirt, right. And so they do smell like sheep, but it's really beautiful. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a special group, and I feel like that too with our, like, we're just coming off the heels of our conference, that really struck me again this year.
Yeah.
I think more than it has in previous years, just how...
Yeah, you're going to make me cry. Thursday, our board meeting day was really special to me. The time. I wish we could be together more. And it's such a brief time that we have, but I love how when we have it, we make good use of it, as far as just loving each other. Somebody at the conference asked me, tell me like what it's like on the board. Do you have tension? I'm like, not a bit. There is not one bit of tension between us. We love and respect each other deeply. Yeah. And we are so for each other in every way. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a beautiful time. Yeah. So for those listening, like our board gets together the day before the conference. It was 5-6 hours, and we had a nice long meeting together. Then we go out for dinner, and it's our one chance a year, for everybody to gather. And I don't know, maybe like you've been on the board a long time, so you can maybe speak to it. But at least in my experience now, being a part of this, that might have been our best day together yet. And I mean, we were missing Cam. He was virtual, but
Cam was.
He was there.
He was so there. With us.
Oh, he was.
I think there have been other times too. It really is a good time, but in some ways, we're growing in depth of relationship. So that does mean there's more potential. Yeah. I remember a year where Wendy was really hurting. Were you with us then? I think maybe. She was just reeling from some, stuff in the BCC world that was painful for her, and I think we loved her. Yeah.
That's a great way to describe it, because I think, I sense that love.
Yeah.
That camaraderie, that sense that we really are for each other. Like you said, that's it's very rare, because I've sat on other boards and I've been involved in other things, but it's to have that kind of unity and sense of care for each other is special.
Yeah, I don't have that many places really like to that depth, and I think in a sense of I guess I just understand that the people who I'm sitting with really get my stuff, right? Like, they know the things that are, and everybody's a counselor, so they know what's not helpful, what's helpful.
That's right.
So it's a sweet space. That was almost my most encouraging part about our time together at the conference was that day. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. It was very sweet. And then we jump into the conference, which is also really encouraging. But so backing up a little bit, I wanted to just talk about when you and I first met, because it was right around that time of I think it was 2014. I think so. You would have.
Oh, 2014 when we met. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd probably been on the. I totally remember that. Yeah. I went to a CCEF conference. I'd flown in from China, I think. Do you remember that?
Okay. Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
I think I was on my way home.
You were with Pioneers at the time?
Yeah, I was serving with a mission organization and caring for missionaries around, like in Eastern Asia. And yeah, so yeah, I was like, oh, I could stop in at that conference on the way home. So I did. And and you were there. It was our tour, and that was your first introduction, I think.
Yeah, we went all the way to San Diego.
Yeah.
Couldn't have picked a year where it was, or was at Hershey or something.
Yeah, I remember when reading, oh, it's going to be in San Diego. Well, I'm not going to that one, and then thinking, well, wait a minute, that's on the way home. I can do that.
A little pit stop.
The timing was right. Yeah, and I feel like we were, at that conference, Bob Kellerman, right from the get-go, when I was on the BCC, was saying, you need to do something in Canada. I'm like, who's going to listen to me?
Yeah.
I used to say my bio is I'm a wife and a mom who ran out of work. It's like I don't have a job anywhere, who is going to listen to me? And you guys nudged me too. And you were the ones... You were the one, I think, or maybe both you. You need to talk to Nathan Penny at Hope. I remember you. Yeah. So when I was first trying to think of who would I gather, what Canadians would I gather together who have influence in the biblical counseling world? Yeah. And you guys were the ones who I would never have heard of Nathan if it wasn't for you.
Well, and I didn't even really know Nathan at that point, but. I think in God's providence. So my aunt works at Hope, and she had been at Hope since day one. I don't know if she's the first, because it was like Robbie Simons, and then they needed an administrator, and then I think my aunt got hired on. She worked in the as a secretary or whatever, front desk, and so she's been there all these years. And I remember them telling me about doing. I think they were doing Mike Wilkerson's heart resurgence stuff, because that was big, coming out of, because I think he was part of Mars Hill, and so they were doing that stuff. And I remember them talking a little bit about things, and it was right around that time, and going, that sounds like biblical counseling. And I was taking that course at Heritage. I think that's actually where we first met.
Did I come to sit in on the class?
You came and you sat in the back.
Oh, and who was teaching that? That was a guy from Ottawa.
Yeah, Jim Dodds.
Yeah,
Jim. That you talk about, that first class where it was Wayne Mack, with Jim, that was because he did the same thing. He walked through scripture from creation to Christ and just unpacked, the in a way that I'd never I'd been to Bible college. I'd been growing up in the church, but all of a sudden it was wow, this is incredible. And
I was so excited that somebody was teaching biblical counseling in Canada. I just came to sit in the class and soak it in. It's happening.
And that's where I kind of got a taste of it. And then once hearing through my aunt that they were doing some stuff at Hope, I remember asking her, I said, who should I talk to at your church? Who's doing this stuff? Yeah. And she pointed me to Nathan.
And then you guys had a meeting with Nathan
I think
already.
I just connected with him, and he was, he's Nathan, right? He's such a great guy. And it was and then,
eager to help. And
exactly.
2014 that was?
Yeah, I think it was.
That conference was.
Yeah, it was just after, I think, the CCF conference. It was maybe late fall, November, December, something like that. Yeah. And I think I just connected you guys, and then wasn't really.
Yeah, and then I got some people together. Wendy was there, of course. Yeah. David Robinson was there from the beginning. Okay. We had a guy from St. John, New Brunswick, Herb Hunter, who now serves full-time in missions in South Africa.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Who else was right at the beginning?
Was Lee Lewis there at the beginning?
No, Lee came into the country. We nabbed him when he got here. Yeah.
Cam?
Cam was right from the beginning, definitely. Yeah. Anyways, I don't remember how many of us there were, and I kind of had in my mind coalition, but I didn't want to put that on the group. I thought okay, here we are, a group of Canadians. Right. What does Canada need from us for the church to grow in this ministry of caring for souls? And so we slowly landed on coalition, and it was like we worked to decide that. And we don't want to be a certifying body. We don't want to be an educating institution. We think what we should be is something that helps put wind in the sails of people who are doing it. So if somebody else wants to be a certifying body, we're going to be all over that, or educating, like we're all over that. I have my heritage shirt on.
There you go.
So we're excited about helping people do it, but not necessarily being an organization that is doing that. Yeah.
I've always found it, well, I shouldn't say I've always found it, but when I started, it was like trying to explain it to people.
Yeah.
It was kind of hard because they're like, well, do you do counseling? Or like, well, yeah, we all do counseling, but we're not like, not under the umbrella
organization
of our...
does. Yeah.
But I like how you say that, like putting wind in the sails of people that are already doing things.
Yeah. Or are hungry for it, like how people find people in their area who can help them take a next step, or to help people know what are the steps you could take to move along in your church, but not actually necessarily doing the work.
Well, and like I think through that, networking being a huge part of that, right? Like bringing people together, because to your point, when you started your journey, it's like you could only find 4 people on the NANC website, and I'm sure there was other people doing things, but I think something about the nature of counseling that we tend to sort of just get focused in on our little
I've thought about this, because I think counselors tend to be people who are like one-on-one, like this is the person in front of me is where, and I think if it hadn't been for the absolute void I felt, like people loved us and loved us well. It was a horrific loss, like with a lot of trauma to it, and everybody was reeling from the trauma though, and so nobody really, like everybody needed help. There was nobody to help because everybody in our world needed help dealing with my husband's death. So I just realized, oh my goodness, and then to be in a church where they were wanting to prioritize preaching. That's why the pastor was. I'm like, 2 sessions isn't even touching the toenail of this thing for us. Like we need real help here. So when I realized that just has always forced me more in that outward than I think most biblical counselors would be. And one isn't more right than the other. It's just kind of how God shapes us. And when you got your nose to the grindstone meeting with people, it's hard to look up.
It is. It is. Yeah, definitely. But I think that's why I've appreciated the coalition, even from being an outsider too, an observer. Like, I remember coming to the conferences in, I think it was 2018, 2019, and then that was just sweet for me to be in amongst people that I knew also shared that passion. That's what struck me about it, because I think maybe like you, I felt I was at a big church that loved God. There was good preaching, as you say. There was some good fellowship, but I felt like I was really passionate about this thing that the people around me didn't share, and I was like really hungry to see it grow. And so I remember just being so refreshed, especially I think it was 2019 when Bob Kellerman came to speak. And just feeling like, I love being around these people. Because there's just this shared excitement, passion. It
is an interesting thing because obviously the Bible prioritizes the public ministry of the Word. I don't think it prioritizes over the personal ministry of the Word, but it is vital and valuable. But there are a lot of people sitting in the pew, including me back then, who are hearing the words but aren't figuring out how to make them connect to life. And I think that's still the predominant person in the pew, is that I know this is supposed to have something to do with my life, but I'm not really sure how to make it connect. And so that piece and being with people who I remember feeling when I was in California for class, like I was like the ugly duckling who found her family, and I really wasn't an ugly duckling. I was a swan. It was just like, these are my people. They get me. They talk my language. I get them. And it just felt really good to have that.
I love what you said there, just about people sitting in the pew and having a hard time connecting
Yeah.
to real life.
And maybe
I think
even
that's-
really earnestly wanting to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
but
it's not
just,
for
I
lack
don't know
of desire.
how to make it connect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and until you've tasted it and realized it really does connect,
Yeah.
it can just feel kind of rote or empty, or you
Right.
know, or like somehow you're failing.
Yeah.
And like when people, one of the things I do usually right at the beginning of counseling is get people to share with me from their own quiet time, because what I want to know is anything happening?
Right.
Right? Are
Yeah.
they having a quiet time, number one? And when they do they and God really talk to each other? And if there's a sense that they don't, I'm saying there's no shame in that. Learning to hear from God is a learned skill.
Yeah.
And you grow in it. And we're probably always going to be growing in it. I don't know that we're ever going to feel like, okay, now I really like, this is it. I'm at the top of, I know how to talk to God and listen to Him, you know? But I think that's part of what our job is to help people learn how
Yeah.
to listen to God in His words. Yeah.
That's a great description of it. Yeah, because I think that's what struck me, you know, having grown up in a Christian home, and my parents are wonderful, godly people. You know, I grew up in strong Bible teaching. You know, but somewhere along the line, I think it was in my 20s, you know, I started to drift. Never like left the faith, but you know, like just like I went to church because it was like, okay, this is what you're supposed to do, and I'm serving and whatever. But kind of reached this point, I think it was like 27, 28, where I was like, okay, this doesn't feel real to me. Like I need to just get a taste of what this is really about. And I remember kind of in desperation, and there was no crisis in my life, just kind of like, okay, like, you know, I can't keep going through the motions. I can't keep going to church, sitting in the pew, listening to things that aren't sort of touching my heart. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but I decided at one point, I was like, okay, I'm going to open my Bible. I said, I'm going to start at the book of Acts, because I've never really dug into the book of Acts. And I spent like 2 weeks, and I read from Acts to the end of Revelation.
Oh, wow.
Like every night for a couple of hours. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to watch TV. I'm not going to, you know, I'm just going to read my Bible. And it was kind of like opening up and saying, like, Lord, if this is really real, just show me.
Yeah.
And it was like God just started weaving these pieces together, and I saw the way Scripture, like how these different letters and writings like all wove together, and that was kind of the beginning of like God stirring my heart. And then I went back.
Were you in school yet or no?
No, just before actually.
Yeah.
And then I went to Heritage to start a master's degree, because I thought, you know, something started within me, and it kind of awoken. Like I was like, oh, I remember when I was a late teen, like I wanted to be a youth pastor. I wanted to be in ministry. But that kind of has gone away for the last 10 years. Like, you know, I should do something about that. And then it was after my first year that in that summer is when they had that course at Heritage, the biblical counseling course.
Okay.
And I remember looking like, oh, I want to take a summer course, because I was only taking 1 or 2 courses at a time. I was working full time, and when I saw that, I was like, that sounds really interesting. And just
awesome.
And then it was like, so this kind of little process over a year, God kind of stirring something within me, and it was like all of a sudden all kinds of stuff just started making a ton of sense to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is what I need to be doing.
Isn't God's providence beautiful? Like when you get to look at the big picture, and it doesn't mean there's not, His providence also has the hard parts in it too, but the big picture, like you just think, wow, it's so good to just know He's guiding, right? Like,
He is,
I remember after my husband died, somebody gave me a little book of poetry, and there was a Gaelic prayer in there, and it was something just about like, I know you don't know the way, just put your hand in my hand, I can see, and let me lead. And I feel like that's what He's been doing, and that's what I'm hearing there. Is like, you're like, oh, well, that looks interesting. And that's your life.
Well, and I want to share too, like, so one of the things you did when you came to that class, I don't know if you remember this, but you said you were there because you were excited, you know, and you wanted to meet the students that were there. But then you had planned this call with David Pallison. Do you remember that?
I was doing some. Yeah, I do remember.
So it was like a conference call, and you said, and at the time I was like, I don't know who this David Pallison guy is, but I got to sit in on this phone call with some other people and kind of ask him questions.
Yeah.
And now I realize, like, I'm like, oh, I wish I could go back, like, and go,
access.
and, because that was such a sweet call with him.
Yeah, that was part of a BCC responsibility, and there were there was more than one. Like, I planned calls with a few people. Remind me, were they video calls or were we just on the phone?
Just on the phone.
I was thinking,
that
was
wasn't
before
a video
calling even.
So we were on some,
it was like
teleconference
there was
app
some
or
really
something.
tricky way of getting into it. Yeah.
And there weren't that many of us on there, but there was a few people I think from Canada, and so it was just kind of a Q&A with him, and
that was a cool initiative. That was probably Bob Kellerman's idea, and I think those kinds of things were happening in other regions as well. But that was something offered to us in Canada.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, that's so cool.
Those funny things that I remember, like, the last 10 years of having kids, my memory is just all over the place. But there's certain things that stand out, and that was one of those things.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize how fortunate I was to be on that call back then.
Yeah, he definitely was a special contributor to this field in this era.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that was, so maybe one question, just for our listeners, even, like, and what's a book or what's some other piece of literature or something or article that has spoken to you?
Oh, man.
And I know that's a tough question to ask, but
it is. And because there have been so many that in a moment, like in the moment of need, let's think. Like, if I go back to my degree, one of my early courses I had to read and do the workbook for Trust in God by Jerry Bridges, which is something, When Life Hurts. I can't remember the whole subtitle.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's not a biblical counseling book, but it's a biblical counseling book.
Yeah.
And it was really a life changer for me, actually. That one would be really big. I haven't read it in a number of years, but I thought I should take people through that.
Okay.
Because it was just good. He's such a humble guy and really honest about his own struggles and how the Lord met him in them. And so that one was really good. I think probably Grasping God's Word, that's another textbook. That's like an introductory hermeneutic textbook.
Right, yeah.
And I think just because it was another layer of really giving me good footing in the Scripture so that I felt more confident handling the Scripture, that would have been a piece. Instruments in the Redeemer's Hand, Love, Know, Speak, Do, like that's just so, it's so good to have those categories to think about how I'm helping people. And then some outside of the field, Tim Challies' book on sorrow.
Seasons of Sorrow.
Yeah,
really,
is that good?
Really good book.
Really good book.
Very raw and
Bob Kellerman's little the 31-day devotional book on grief has been very good. Yeah, an important book. I actually love those 31-day devotionals.
Oh, they're so good. Yeah.
Yeah, just good, solid little bites, and especially if it's somebody who's someplace low, like a little bite is better. But it's meaty, like they're all meaty. Yeah, actually, Esther Lew who wrote the Shame one?
Shame,
that one's really good
That's
too.
A good.
Yeah, so, and sometimes it's the, what season, when I happen to be in a season where I'm helping women in not good marriage relationships, and I'm using Brad Hambrook's Navigating Destructive Relationships, and that's a great book. So it's whatever book I need, right?
Right, at the time,
It's like, oh, good job, Brad. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of those 31-day devotionals, going back to what we were talking about connecting what you're learning on a Sunday morning to real life, like those, that's what I feel like those are really great for. They're just, because they're short, but as you say, meaty, and you know, I've seen a lot of good fruit come out of those through counseling and just using those in. Yeah, because sometimes I'm always amazed because you said about talking to people and asking them what they're doing in their devotional life, right? And I'm always amazed at how many people say they're not doing much, you know? And it's like, okay, well, that's why I love those little devotionals, because you can just say, okay, let's get on that train and start.
This is going to be a help. Yeah, and I think often, like, if you were like trying to have a conversation with God and you weren't having a conversation with God, like it would be, why do I do this every day?
Right.
Like if you can't figure out how it gets meaningful, then I wouldn't do it either. Like I feel like it's hard. So that's one of my thrills, is to help people realize like he actually wants to talk to you in his book. Yeah. And he is talking to you in his book, and it is relevant for what's going to happen in your day right now. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so cool when you see that happen.
Yeah. Their eyes open up, and that relationship just go to a new depth. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love it.
I often, when I'm starting out, I don't say it to everybody, sort of depending on the situation, but almost always the first session I say, my biggest hope for you is that you'll grow in your love for the Lord. Yeah. Because that's what's going to nourish you and fill your soul. Yeah. Well beyond the counseling session.
Yeah. Sometimes when I've met with people like who are struggling with depression, I will say early, like, I can't promise you this is going away. Because that is what people want generally. Like one of the questions in my intake form is, what do you hope for? I want you to fix it. And so I'm like, I can't promise you that. But what I can promise you is that it can be different with God in the middle of it with you. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing this. This has been really, I know we have lots of good conversations, but it's fun to sit down and talk through some of this stuff in a concentrated time. Maybe as we close, I'd just like to ask one question, which would be, what excites you about the future of biblical counseling in Canada and the CBCC?
You're going to hate my answer.
Okay.
Having you excites me. I knew you were going to hate it. Don't take it out. You have to leave this in. Okay. Because, we were doing our best as volunteers. And there was something about the pandemic that wearied us all. And our best got less than it was before the pandemic. And it was weighty. I mean, so weighty that David felt he couldn't continue with both leading his church and leading the CBCC. And so that was just a reality for all of us. Right. And so I don't know where we would be if we hadn't have been able to hire you. And it's not just that we got to do a hire, but you know how much I appreciate, particularly your sensitivity to the Holy Spirit. That's what I see. And that excites me, because then it's not about Curtis is great. It's about, oh my word, like, he is listening to God and God is using him. And that just has unlimitless potential. So that's what excites me the most.
Wow. Thank you. That's some high praise. Well, and thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll leave that in there.
Good.
Well, thanks for joining us. We'll have to do this again and have another conversation. I hope this is enjoyable for our listeners, just to hear more about your story and all that God's been doing these past 25 years. And longer, but but significant in these last 25 years.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I want to remind you to go to CanadianBCC.ca to find more ways to connect with the Canadian Biblical Counseling Coalition. Be sure to tune in to our next podcast. New episodes will be released on the second Thursday of every month.